Kia ora and welcome to this Balance is Better Q&A session with lovely Kathryn Berkett. So tēnā koe Kathryn, and thanks for coming in and talking to us today. This conversation, we're going to explore things around building resilience. We're going to talk in particular about how sport can support that area and some tips for parents, some of those things that we need parents to consider. So before we get into the conversation, Kathryn, it'd be wonderful to know a bit more about you. So can you tell us about yourself and the work that you do?
Kia ora. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. Such an important area of understanding. Building resilience is one of the most important things we'll ever do. And by the way, I'm still building resilience now, so it's not like it's parents have got to do it for kids and then it's all over. I have got 2 kids of my own, which is pretty cool. It's actually my daughter's turning 18 tomorrow, so I'm not going to have 2 kids soon. She's going to be an adult, theoretically, isn't it? I'm not going to be responsible anymore. Morgan's turning 18 and Mason, my son, is 15. So had that whole adolescent time sort of getting to the end of it, which is wonderful. But 100% the information, as much as I can share today and that I know, helps me as a parent every day.
Yeah.
And by the way, it doesn't help me never lose my temper or never get things wrong. It helps me understand why when I get them wrong, that it's called being a human being. So this is not about being some sort of, I don't know what a perfect parent would be anyway, but it's not. It's about knowing ourselves. And I feel hugely privileged that I get to travel all over the country. Well, obviously not at the moment, but in times when we can, and share this information, because the amount of people that walk away with pennies dropped and understanding, and it's not my information, it's information that is readily available, but I study it so much I can package it up so we can understand it. And I love it, absolutely love seeing the faces of people, which is what I'm missing the most at the moment. Did a free presentation the other day just so I could see some faces in the audience. Love it. So it's neuroscience, it's physiology, it's understanding how we're connected, brain and body, and therefore how we can control ourselves a little bit better and understand ourselves a bit better. That's what it is, really.
So I think, that's a great place to start, right? Is going, okay, let's set the scene and talk about what is resilience and what sits behind building resilience.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because words are words. Words are words, and you can say a word and it becomes that meaning. So when I talk about resilience, and when we talk about resilience in the neuroscience area, we're talking about the ability to feel emotions, and that might actually last for 5 minutes, a couple of hours, a day, a week sometimes, depending on what. I mean, sometimes we can stay in the feeling for a very long time, but it's staying in the feeling where it's not too overwhelming, where you still have an element of control, so we call that tolerable, and then being able to come back down when you need to.
Okay.
So resilience isn't, oh, they're resilient, never seen them cry, which we often say. That's not resilience, because people say, gosh, it's difficult being resilient, because people think to be resilient is to be so strong and not feel. So really important to know that it's feeling to a tolerable level for an appropriate amount of time and calming down. And within all of this, we are such incredibly individual people. We've got 86 billion cells and 1,000 trillion connections connecting those 86 billion cells. That never gets duplicated. There's so much diversity. So whenever I talk or anybody talks about humans and personalities and behaviour, you always filter it with your own self and your own knowledge. Or if you're talking about your own tamariki, you're talking about their filter. So whatever I say today is a general space, and resilience is being able to hold and calm down. So, and when we talk through this, that's why sport can be a massive place for us to learn resilience.
Because I think you're right. There's an assumption that resilience is a constant, and you've got to, but it is actually about being able to control and come up and down through that, right?
Absolutely, and be okay with it. Be okay with me feeling sad, angry, anxious, okay with you feeling frustrated. Those sorts of things. It's about recognising it's not a weakness to feel.
Yeah.
It's actually a strength to be able to tolerably hold and come back down again. So it's reframing that space.
Part of the conversation today is kind of pointed in on that adolescence and that rangatahi age group, which is you, as you said before, something you're coming to the end of. But probably an important context to put on this as well is understanding what is happening in the adolescent brain, and what are the changes and how that then intermixes with that resilience building.
Yeah, and anybody who's had their own child 100% knows that it can be overnight, you know. and I say this with all due respect for those beautiful rangatahi going through it, by the way. Like I said, yeah, Mason is coming towards the end of it. We still go into it. We've still got times when we're going into it. I go, oh, having a adolescent moments, or week or month. But it's when we hit puberty is when adolescence starts, and we are knowing that could be getting much earlier. So I have had on my caseload a number of girls who have hit it at 7. So we're not talking about, you know, just necessarily older. I've also was working with a girl who hit puberty at 16, right? So we've got a massive span. Average for girls is 12, average for boys is 14. We've got all genders sitting in, you know, there. So, but that's just an average spread. What we know is once we hit puberty, the body changes, hormones change, but that's not the main thing we're working with. Essentially, the body changes to be able to reproduce.
Yep.
The brain recognises that I will be able to reproduce soon. Note that I am not saying we should reproduce, soon, right? I'm saying we can. And once the body recognises that, the brain has to upgrade to protect the offspring we can now produce, right? So it's the brain changes that we see behaviourally really making a big difference. And that's impacted by the hormonal change. And there's so much that changes. But essentially we're upgrading to become this beautiful adult who can look after a child. And the upgrade, while we upgrade anything, renovate a house, upgrade on a computer, we glitch. We have to use a portaloo instead of using the toilet. There's glitches, we do find other ways of doing things, and anything we try and do is a bit more difficult. Okay. So what our adolescents are having happen is this upgrade, which makes it sort of walking through much more difficult in the brain, and so much more thinking and so much more going on. So sometimes we can get shut down, don't want to talk to anybody, or we get this overstimulated, right?
Yeah.
And we might get 5 minutes after the other. Or we might just get one's got that personality, one's got that. Do you see what I mean? So we have to respect that. And these days, because we all went through that, but these days, social media and exposure to all of this sort of stuff and expectations and the abilities of parents to be able to see and do, especially in sports, what are you doing, how have you done today, that we can hear in the moment. We just need to put on top of that, our rangatahi are going through these major changes, plus an additional pressure on there. So resilience is so much more important when we're thinking about this space.
So what does that look like? What does building resilience actually mean, and how do you do that?
Yeah, and again, we can say words. I'm going to say something really simplistically, because it is sort of simple, but I do get how much it takes to actually build resilience. When I said to be resilient is to hold to a tolerable level and calm down, it means we need to get the body to practice that. I use the analogy that I could sit here and teach you about riding a bike. I could draw a picture of a bike and tell you to hold the handles, but until you actually get out there and your body does the biking, you're not going to be able to ride a bike. Yeah. So we often tell our kids, you need to be resilient, you need to be kind, you need to walk away from people if they say things to you. All of these instructions, verbal instructions, which is great, just like it would be good for me to tell you how to ride a bike, but until we practice it. So what the body needs to do is practice holding to a tolerable level and calming down.
Okay.
Right. So how do we do that? The first way we learnt to hold and calm down was our newborns. We played boo. And when we went like this, you watch their little bodies, they go into a little bit of stress. They go, where have they gone? Yeah. And then you go boo, and they go, whew, and they calm down. And what you've just done to their bodies
is practice.
It's actually in their body, activate a moment of stress, calm down. This little piggy went to market. That's anxious. They feel like anxious. What's going to happen to the piggy? Wee. Oh, their bodies calm down. Going on a bear hunt, doing our puppet plays, trying to do jigsaws, those shapes into those round things. Do you see how they've got lots of things to do, colours and shapes, but so much of play involves activating to a tolerable level and calming down, hide and seek, up on the slides, climbing that spider higher and higher, throwing the ball further. So we don't learn resilience when we're under too much pressure. So sitting in class in our maths and English classes, we can learn resilience, but it's not the best place to learn it.
Right.
Can you already see how sport,
Yeah.
play,
Yep.
interaction with a group of people, I'm not saying there shouldn't be a winner and stuff like that, but lots of it, especially for our younger kids, it doesn't matter too much if you win or lose, do you see? So that it's tolerable to feel I'm going to lose, or I'm not going to get that shot, or I missed the goal, do you see?
Yeah.
So that's why sport and play, along with music and arts and dramas and stuff, are the places where we're significantly more likely to build resilience than in formal education spaces. There's a reason for formal education, but resilience will be built within sport so much more likely.
I sit here and I go, because I've got a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I'm going, what are those little moments? And did I do that? And because this is the challenge, right? From a parent's perspective, and knowing where the right places are to intervene and to support, and being able to identify what those scenarios or tolerable moments of stress to create. Absolutely.
So again, depending on your individual. Not that they're 7 years old and they'll be 7 minutes of stress. Or, like that's not right. But where is it and what is it for them? If they're really good at sport, then their tolerable level is going to be way higher in that space than someone who finds that really difficult, do you see? So as a parent, we need to observe and ask, do I think it's tolerable? Now the question there is not, are they crying?
Yes, yeah,
because tolerable sometimes involves crying, okay? You can feel really bad about it, but you can bounce back. So do you think they're in control still? And do you think they still have the capacity to get back when they need to? That's what we're asking, and that might mean they are angry, or they're anxious, or they're sad, or that's still leaving them there. And asking yourself, do I think they can get themselves out of this? And what we know now is our parenting behaviour is significantly more attached to our children than certainly my parents were to me, and their parents were to them. Do you see what I mean? And it's just a change in environment. So we have to become more aware of this resilience building, because we have to be in their space and let them feel it. And you know as a parent how hard that is.
It is.
Which is why sometimes coaches in sports organisations are going to be better for building resilience, because as soon as you go and pick your kid up and they've been absolutely fine, and then you turn up and they go, I lost and I'm really sad, and the coach goes, what? That was
nothing. What is it? Hang on,
because with you they're sometimes less resilient because you save them all the time and they know and they're expecting that, whereas they have to learn that tolerable a lot better, as long as they've got a good relationship with the coach, but they're still not the parent. So sometimes it's a better space. Then certainly me as a parent, I would jump in probably too much.
I can see that. I mean, I coach my 8-year-old, and it's a challenging space to be in, right? Is going, when do you jump in and when do you leave them to be? Because you're right, sport has there are so many moments in sport. There's teamwork that you can build, it's relationship skills, and all of that layers into that resilience building.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest pieces of advice, parents, coaches, learn to step back. Learn to step back and assess. Don't just jump in because our gut says, quick, fix them, stop them crying, whatever. It's actually, can I leave them? And I would much prefer, when I'm writing a program and I go back in, that I see someone left them a little bit too long and we lost the plot, than I didn't hear of any moments of stress. Do you see what I mean? Because if you don't play peekaboo, you're not going to build resilience. So the biggest thing is creating the space and not trying to run it too much. Letting the kids think up their own exercises and run it and coach each other and ref each other and stuff like that. Because within that, I tell you what, tuakana taina, they are much less likely to save a younger one than I would be. So sometimes letting them go in a space is actually going to be better for resilience than you as an adult running it. Do you see?
Yeah, so there's two kind of things there, right? Going, understanding the tamariki and the rangatahi that your kids aren't really understanding the realm. What are those pressure points and pressure moments? But then also getting out of the way sometimes, right? And just watch and observe. we don't always have to intervene, and that is certainly a change from a societal perspective now, right?
100%. So one of the things parents, when you say what can parents do, certainly I would often explicitly, the first time I met the coach of my kids or whatever, I would say, by the way, if you need to discipline, if you need to do anything, this is my son, my daughter, and it's all good, because these days you almost have to explicitly say that, because often coaches are scared about what they can do, what they can't do. So certainly if you're a parent and you think, actually my kid does need a bit of resilience building, you might want to say, by the way, if you want to let them do that or push them a little bit harder, then just, you've got my permission, sort of thing. So that is a conversation you could maybe have, or coaches have with. That's the sort of thing maybe.
Because that's a really important point, is actually going, what's the relationship between all of the people in that kid's life, and how do we as parents build good relationships with our kids' coaches to help them create those environments that are going to be fun and enjoyable, that make the kids want to come back, and they're able to learn a whole load of different lessons within that sporting experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So adolescence throws, we come back to this teenage brain, what happens in that space. What are some of the maybe other considerations or what are some of the benefits really that sport provides for that adolescent, because of all of those other glitches that are going on at the time?
Yeah, and so, I do days and days of training around the adolescent brain, so again, condensing it. One of the fascinating things is the change in facial expression and perspective taking. So adolescents change, this is just in the early stages, they change their ability to see complex facial expressions. So we go back to the basic. If you've got a smile on your face, you're happy.
Yeah.
If you've got a flat face or confused or hungry, you're angry. Or you're sad. How many people have you're an adolescent, go, you're always angry with me, And so that's okay if it's a parent to a child, basically, or to your adolescent. But if you're thinking about a bunch of kids together, and they go, who was looking at me is angry with me, or she hates me, she's, no, we don't. So having a new group to go into when you're an adolescent can be really difficult if you've got former relationships with them. So you see groups who go through, I played volleyball in college, we went through the whole time together, and you knew each other. So you knew that if she looked at you and you thought she was angry, she probably wasn't anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, you had that. So that's one of the things to think about, is if you're forming a new group, especially in early adolescence, make sure your kids have a lot of time to get to know each other. Do a lot more of that whakawhanaungatanga at the beginning, rather than your little kids come in, they go, hi, and they're everybody's friend, right?
Yeah.
So there's that feeling of, and to feel belonging is important for the safety in this space.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd probably talk about is the impact of hormones on some of the parts of our brain. And so testosterone impacts our amygdala. And so an increase in testosterone, it's all a continuum, so it's the male end of the continuum, that's the higher of the testosterone. The amygdala basically says separation from parent and child. So the more activated the amygdala, the more separation. So this is where actually, if you've got a relationship with your coach, your kid comes home and goes, do you know what the coach said? And you're like, I think I've been telling you that, Jessie.
I've been saying that the whole time.
Exactly, but because what happens at puberty, and this is especially for the male end of the spectrum there, is that they go, don't listen to anything that person says, don't do everything opposite, all that sort of stuff. So can you see where sport can be really important in that space? For having a mentor and having someone else to talk to and stuff like that. And even the older kids and the older grades or whatever start to become really important.
Yeah.
For the estrogen activation, that end of the spectrum, the estrogen increases oxytocin, which is the hormone that made us fall in love with our babies. And so that means girls, oxytocin, fall in love with each other.
Yep.
And there's that need to be with each other, because biologically we raised babies in groups of females.
Yep.
So we click together.
Okay.
But that means if you get put out of the click, it's like being taken away from your baby.
Yeah.
So can you see how that belonging to that group or not belonging becomes so much more important when you've got that increased level of oxytocin. Do you see?
Yeah.
So there's those sorts of things that can really advise us around sports, which is why, in a generalistic sense, if you can be in that sport before you hit puberty and stay in a generalised, I'm not about keeping all teams together, I'm not saying that, but do you see keeping that generalised relationship with a coach, with your peers, that will often increase the likelihood of maintaining?
Yeah, because that's, we know that a big driver for girls and for young women in sport is the social connection, and it is much more important to girls than it is to boys. Boys, there's potentially more around winning and the outcome, whereas girls, it is the social connection. Hey.
So can you see how that biology fix that? And by the way, I've met boys with higher oxytocin levels than females, and they want to, be part of that clique. So we know that there's a continuum, right? So it's anywhere along there. But generalising, and there is a status thing for boys when they hit puberty that, again, hitting that, where am I? So it's really important we keep the score and actually allow winning around that stage. Otherwise, they're going to go, this is just, why would I bother? So it's actually where we do need to have winners and losers, in that space, whereas you sort of don't necessarily need it earlier if you don't want to, but at that stage, they'll ask for it. And it's listening and saying, what do I feel like they need here? And that's why if you actually just spend a day and say, hey, today, what do you guys want to do? Why don't you set up a game? Why don't you set up an exercise and watch? And they will be like, we're winning. We're going to have 6 games and see who wins the most games, and you go, okay, that's something that I haven't been doing. So just try and maybe watch them do some natural things instead of thinking we've got all the answers as adults, because actually we don't. And if we let them go with their guts a lot more, we can follow their needs a lot more, to a level, and then put some specialty around it, especially if we're not going for high performance. We're just going for participation and being there and engaging and stuff, which is massively important for resilience.
Oh, huge. And, we know, kids want to play sport to be with their mates and to have fun and to be challenged, and so we're talking about winning before, and actually winning is still a really important part of that building resilience. It's just in the context, right? It depends on the kids, depends on their...
We've got to win and lose somewhere.
And
I always say, when people talk about, we should take this away because kids feel failure. I'm like, what if they go for their first job interview? Are you going to go to the boss and say, look, could you just hire everybody that's come for the interview?
That'd be so nice, wouldn't
it? So guess what? You're going to lose. You're going to probably have a relationship breakup at some stage in your life. You're going to lose someone you love. Those sorts of things. They happen. We can't stop these things happening. So the more resilience we build, the more people can feel their bodies and recognise those emotions and allow those emotions, and then have the practice, like riding the bike, of bringing ourselves back down. That's when, even though those things happen, my son loses the plot when he loses. Don't get me wrong. He hates it. He's like, you just stay away from him for a bit. And then he's back down. Is he playing again? Yes, he is. So that's resilience, okay? But I don't want him to be okay with losing. I want him to get angry about losing, getting whatever the word is. But it's tolerable. And he calms down. Yeah. And I totally relate. My 8-year-old is actually the same. We have competitions of basketball in the backyard, and he will lose his mind, but he will want a rematch. He'll want to come back, and so that's the value that sport can play, right? And absolutely. And the worst thing you could do as a parent is say, well, he gets really upset when he loses, so I'll let him win. Do you see?
Oh, no.
Right, exactly. But, so that's what we sometimes do. We go, I get so upset. But do you see, the more he loses, the more resilient it's going to get. Not less angry, not less there, but it's going to stay tolerable, and then it's going to be the calming down faster.
Because that's a really important point, right? Is actually going, the getting angry to a point and crying to a point is okay, because it is about the come down, the being able to bring your emotions back down, that tolerable moment of stress and understanding, and then being able to come back. And so it's about building that stuff up over time, right?
Well, this was a millisecond, right? And then you went and hid in the cupboard. And that's a cupboard. I'm in the cupboard, but it couldn't be too long. Or they sit next to you, and they close their own eyes. That was my favourite, because you didn't have to move. They're just and then they'd open their eyes and you'd be there. But do you see how it grew? And then it's spotlight, and then it's out. And so it's increases. That's what we want.
Because the risk is going from 0 to 100.
So that's a good one, the weight analogy, right? So we if we want to grow our arms, we pick up a weight that stretches us tolerably.
Yep.
But if we picked up the biggest weight, we'd rip out, right? And you wouldn't be able to use your arm for it. But you pick up the small one and you keep picking up the small one forever, you're wasting your time. And as parents, we go, no, don't, sweetheart, I'll pick that weight up for you. Do you see?
Yes.
And we're not doing them any favours. We're not doing them any favours. They really need to. It's even with things like being teased and not being picked for the team and all those sorts of things. We actually have to realise that even if you don't agree with it, it's a learning moment for this child. Can you scaffold them enough, give them enough help, but not too much, leave them in that space if it's tolerable, and let them come back down? And that's, by the way, that would be hours and hours of training and talking and discussing around all of that, because that's so much more complicated than simple.
Oh, absolutely.
So parents have to go, put your own filter on your own child, but in a generalised sense. We've got to stop saving our children or keeping any conflict away. I won't make you lose because I don't like seeing you upset when you lose. Actually, no, we're going to go out and we're going to lose again, but I'm going to watch how angry you get and how quickly you come back down.
Yeah.
And as long as that's getting better, then we're okay. Do you see what I mean? So I'm still okay with Mason getting angry and getting annoyed, but I can see that it's completely controlled now and it comes down just fine. And if he's shaking hands and stuff, it's obviously not going to happen until afterwards. So he can do it. He doesn't storm off and stuff. He can hold it and then he gets angry. So if you can see more control over that as they're getting older, then you are doing the right thing. You're building their resilience. Does that make sense?
Man, it's the trickiest place being a parent, right? It's hard work.
But I love this fact is actually, do you know what? It is tricky being a parent, so step back.
Yeah.
Let your kids have some ability to grow into themselves and do things wrong for themselves and have you not around for a little while. And if you hear them having an argument or doing something, can you just leave them?
Yeah.
Do you have to go in? And I tell you what, as a parent, I love that parenting. It's made my life so much better. I don't get as involved.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that, like we go, how does sport replicate some of that, and how do, is it about giving kids time to make up their own games and referee themselves, because all of the skills that they can build in doing that stuff and managing themselves will help build resilience, will help build teamwork, will build communication skills.
I want to be the ref, but I want to be the ref. No, I'm being the ref. Well, how do we decide? I don't know, we do paper, rock, scissors. Cool, we're done. Oh, I lost. Bad luck.
And we're on.
See?
Yeah.
It all in there. There was arguing, there was negotiating, there was disappointment, there was acceptance, all of that. Whereas if I came along as the adult and said, right, you be the coach and you be the ref, and it's like, well, where do we learn in that space? So allowing our kids a lot more freedom in their space is actually one of the best ways to build resilience. And so coaches can do that. Obviously, there's got to be some coaching, but sometimes can there be free space? And even it's just a warm-up. I see that a lot, you guys do your own warm-ups and stuff like that.
And it's, like the caveat on all of this is safe spaces, right?
Yes.
It's not about stepping back entirely and letting chaos.
It's you.
It's you.
It's tolerable.
It's tolerable. And so that's probably one of those key takeaways, going, recognise opportunities for learning, recognise opportunities for tolerable moments of stress, parents stepping back a little, but safe spaces is critical here.
Absolutely. And that watching how often, how long, so that how often do they go into that space and how long do they hold it. And I think coaches, it's really cool for coaches and parents to be watching those sorts of things and saying, actually, when they first turned up, they wouldn't even involve themselves, and now they actually do. And so they might not be playing a whole game yet, or they might not be doing this, or they might not be able to tolerate that yet, but they're significantly better than they were before. It's a journey.
Yeah, cool.
You don't become resilient. Like I said, I'm still working on my resilience.
We're all on this learning journey together. Don't you worry.
Exactly.
So I think if there was some practical tips that you could leave with parents that are watching around how sport can build resilience, or what their role in this should be, what would some of those key take-home messages for parents be?
Know your own child.
Yep.
And advocate for your own child, but make sure you're advocating for the child, not for yourself. Because sometimes that's really hard for a parent. Don't get too caught up in how well they're doing, how many goals they scored. it's watching that resilience in there. And if they've got something that they've got to go for, I feel really angry when someone cuts me off, or someone doesn't pass to me, well, then use that, talk about that, go, how did you feel this time and how did you deal with it? So using those other things, not the actual scoring of the tries or the hitting the, whatever it is, using those emotional things within it. Chatting to them, asking them, debriefing them afterwards, not about the win, but how did you feel and what did you do and what were you happy about, what were you unhappy about. And once our kids can start to feel their own bodies and, oh, I was really angry. Oh, and then what did you do? Oh, I just sort of walked away. How cool is that, yeah? And those sorts of things. So, man, we miss so much opportunity for conversing with our kids. Don't let them be on the iPad on the drive home.
Yeah, I think
Let's have a conversation, or at least them not be on the tablet and them to process it, even if they're not talking to you. But stepping back.
Yeah.
Stepping back and not saving, fixing, those sorts of places. That's where I ask parents to be more aware. And by the way, I need to know this stuff, and I still have to tell myself, don't jump in right now.
Oh, yeah.
Don't do it. It's not like you learn it and all of a sudden your
You're
brain's
amazing
different. I have to override my impulses and not jump in.
Because it is, it's ingrained, right? Like our job as parents is to protect our kids.
Mm-hmm.
But by overdoing it, by stepping in too early, by holding them back from experiences and opportunities, actually we're not helping them learn and grow and build that resilience themselves.
Perfect. And that's what we've got to realise, because one day they are going to be an adult and they are going to have disappointment. That is sadness.
Yeah.
We're not around.
Yeah. You're only one day away, isn't it?
From
one of them moving
18.
Amazing. Hey, look, Kathryn, thank you so much. I absolutely love our conversations. We could go on for hours. I get slightly scared after every time I talk to you about what I have to do now as a parent, but my takeaways are certainly stepping back and watching, letting our kids experience more, and building up those little moments of tolerable stress, being okay with maybe them being a little angry and crying, but can they emotionally bring themselves back together? So thank you so much. I know that this will generate lots and lots of conversations for those that are watching this video. So thank you. Nō reira tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Thank you.